just reading about. Let's start the video. Towards the end of last year, I found myself in a really bad reading slump. I hadn't read and really enjoyed a book in a while. However, a former colleague of mine recommended me a series of books called ACOTAR. I was really hooked, and I think I read all the books in the span of a few months maybe. Now, before I move on, I just have to give an official spoiler warning, because in this video I will be referencing characters, events, relationships, and all sorts of stuff from all the books really. So if you haven't read the books and you plan to do so, just be warned, I will talk about important things, spoilery things in this video. So these books, at least the first books, revolve around a main character called Feyre, and she has two sisters, Elaine and Nesta. These are very different, both in terms of character, personality, and also aesthetics. And I thought it would be really fun to do sewing projects based off of these three sisters. I want to do one project for Nesta, one for Elaine, and one for Feyre in that order. So this video will be dedicated to Nesta. So Nesta is the eldest of these three sisters. She has a lot of demons she's fighting. She was brought up to be a courtier and marry for power. She's quite stubborn and she's scared to let people in. So in the final book, Court of Silver Flames, she also discovers a passion for reading and for fighting, training, and she discovers more about her power. So her powers usually manifest as silver flames, three artifacts with magical power. It's a mask, a crown, and it's a harp. So I want this corset to sort of embrace all the different sides to her. I want it to be in part in leather because it's reminiscent of the Illyrian fighting leathers that they use when they train. I also want to incorporate the imagery of the Dread Trove and her silver flames. I don't want it to be completely out of leather, so I thought I would also do some sort of steel gray panels because it's often said that she has a will of steel. So I'll be using a pattern that I've used before. It's sort of giving me armor in a weird way. Also with the busk in the front with the metal studs and everything, it sort of gives me a feeling of being armored in a bit in a way. I have never sewn with leather. That is a chapter in and of itself. You can't undo seams in leather. This leather is fairly thin, so that should be okay. With a thick needle and some careful stitching. I didn't want to buy leather, but my mom had a leather skirt in the 80s that was torn in some seams and she wasn't gonna wear it and the shape wasn't really that flattering, so I have just taken it apart to get the leather pieces. And in addition to the leather, this steel gray linen material, which I'm also going to do the silver flame embroidery on. The pieces of leather that I have are not big enough for the whole panels, so I will be joining the pattern pieces on the waistline for the leather panels. I don't think it matters in terms of direction when sewing leather. This really just showcases how little experience I have with this. I feel like this really summarizes me and my sewing habits. Throw caution to the wind. It'll probably be fine kind of attitude. I'm also going to glue down the edges of these openings because I can't press them, which is what I would normally do with this pattern. Here are the two pieces of the front panel. So what I'm gonna do is just to put them like so. And then, because you can't pin leather, because you're poking holes and they're permanent, so I have clips that I'm gonna use instead. This is new ground, but it's my philosophy that you won't really learn anything until you actually try, so we'll just have to jump into it. And I'm using a walking foot and a thick needle. And I also have slightly longer stitches for this. I'm not going back and forth for the same reason that I'm using long stitches. I am just going straight across and tying the ends afterwards. Here's the seam. I'll put on the glue and press the edges to each side. So these are the front pattern pieces and these are the 30-line pattern pieces. So I'm just putting these aside for now. For the linen, I will do these, the inserts, and the second and fourth. Here I have the inserts and here are the slitted front panels. I can't baste it, I can't pin it, and I can't really put the clips in a really useful manner. So I think I'm actually, even though it's super scary since I can't undo it, I think I'm gonna try to just sew it as is and just move it as I go along, but just take it super slow. So this will fit like so, and then I'll have a gray panel and then a black panel and so on. I've done a few stretches of embroidery using this thread and I just don't like it. It just looks so hard and metallic and it doesn't look like a soft flame in any way, I think. So what I just tested very briefly was to use a combination of white embroidery thread and silver. So it has, you know, the silver gleam, but at the same time it has the slightly more silkiness of the white thread. So we have the mask and the crown and the harp and also her silver flame. So I'm putting these aside for now. So I'm going to assemble the pieces now for the outer shell. So I think maybe I'll just leave it like this because I kind of like it not being too hard of a transition. So I'm going to do the rest of the layers as well, and at least for now not doing anything in terms of top stitching. My initial thought was to use plastic boning or Ridgeline boning just because I have a lot of it. Thing is though, plastic, Nesta, doesn't feel right. Just doesn't feel right, and I'm gonna go with the fact that that doesn't feel right and do something else, which is spiral steel boning. I am just going to have one piece of boning in the middle of each seam. In terms of channels, I struggled a bit with having enough for the channels and having wide enough for the channels. I have some twill tape, but it's not long enough. I have some satin ribbon, but it is not wide enough. I'm going to use bits and pieces. So starting off by using the twill tape, I'll use as much as I have of that to do boning channels. And when I run out, I'll use pieces of satin ribbon, maybe bias tape. Now I'll need to do some testing regarding the busk and especially the stud side of the busk. So I have this and I also have an awl, so I'm going to try both. See just how it behaves. So this basically just ripped it. I feel like this is a bit unstable. I am just going to test the size I'll need. So this is a fairly small hole, but I don't want to make it so big that the studs will drag the leather and make it... Okay, it was big enough. Okay, so if I start to pull on this, you get a gap. Now it won't necessarily drag too much because the busk will be sewn along the edge here. I think this is plenty as well, actually. In conclusion, the smallest size, so I think that is the result of the experiment. I have just made these marks a bit clearer and I have clipped it together with a lining layer, and now I am just sewing up here, stopping and continuing, and I'm going to tie off the ends. So I'm just going to check that the busk fits. Please fit, please. Okay, so it does fit. Good, 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 good. I think I have to top stitch around here. So after putting in the busk on both sides, I need to sew the back together, get in the boning, grommets, and then the bias binding, top and bottom. One thing that I failed to consider here is getting to all these holes after sewing these pieces together. Hopefully I'm just able to bunch it up sufficiently. That will be interesting. So I did the holes off camera. It was just too much of a hassle to film it. I just had to scrunch up the whole thing to get to it. It fits, which is great news. Now, time for the boning. So I have pre-cut these. So I need to put on the caps to make sure it doesn't scratch the garment. Time for some tools. And that is it. So after trying it on, I found out that the cups are too big, which is so shitty. It's such a bad time to find that out. After all the embroidery and everything, I could just take off the outer embroidery and take it in on each side. I could either do that or I could exchange them. I almost can't believe I did this, but I actually altered the cup a bit on the corset. I did this off camera because it was a tedious and boring process. I had to take off the bias binding, I had to undo the seams, and then I had to, by hand, stitch again in the same holes that I made previously to avoid weakening the leather too much. So I did that for the lining and the outer material, but now it's supposed to fit. It should fit, so it was worth it in the end, but it was a big job that I wasn't sure I had the patience to do.